Hello friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. Alright folks, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you ain't no ordinary trucker's tale. This is the kind of story that'll make you think twice before hitting those long, lonely stretches of highway at night. You ever been so scared behind the wheel that you thought about just leaving the rig on the side of the road and running off into the woods, never looking back? I have. And I ain't just talking about some bad weather or a near miss with a reckless driver. I'm talking about the kind of fear that burrows into your bones, keeps you awake for nights on end, and makes you second-guess everything you see out there on the open road. I've been trucking for over 20 years, and I've seen my fair share of weird stuff, but nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to what happened that night on Route 87 deep in Arizona. It was around 2:30 in the morning. Moon was hanging high, barely visible behind a thick curtain of clouds, and I had just passed through a ghost town, someplace not even marked on most maps anymore. The road stretched out in front of me, long and empty like a ribbon unraveling into darkness. I was humming along, sipping on some lukewarm coffee, trying to keep my eyes open, when I saw something in the road up ahead. First I thought it was a deer, but as I got closer, it looked more like a person, tall, thin, standing real still right in the middle of my lane. I laid on the horn hard. Most folks would jump or wave or run, but this one, he didn't move an inch. Just stood there facing me dead on like he was waiting for me. My high beams lit him up, and I'll never forget what I saw. His eyes were all black like oil pits. No whites, no pupils, just black. His skin looked pale and stretched too tight, like something that had been drying out in the sun for weeks. And his mouth, hell, his mouth wasn't even right. It stretched too wide like a crack in a wall, and it was smiling. Not friendly-like. More like he knew something I didn't. I slammed the brakes and swerved, barely missing him, and as I passed, I swear to you, he turned his head to follow me, not with his body, just his damn head twisted all the way around like some owl from hell. I kept driving, heart racing, palms sweating, telling myself I must have imagined it. Sleep deprivation, maybe, highway hypnosis. But when I looked, in the rear view he was gone. Not walking off, not still standing, just plain gone, and that was only the beginning. I tried to laugh it off, told myself I was just tired, needed to find a rest stop and close my eyes for a bit. But when I reached over to grab my coffee, my hand was shaking so bad I spilled it all over my jeans. Burned like hell, but at least it jolted me back into focus. I was still rolling down Route 87, but the road didn't look the same anymore. The yellow lines seemed faded, like they were being erased behind me. The trees that had been sparse and dry were suddenly thick and dark, crowding the road, almost leaning in. I hadn't seen another car in over an hour, and my GPS had lost signal about 10 minutes back. Just said searching for location on a loop like even the satellites didn't want to be out here. I finally spotted a little gravel turnout with a busted wooden sign that read, "Rest Area 14 Mile." No lights, no vending machines, just a rusted metal trash can and an old concrete table that looked like it had been there since the 60s. I pulled in, killed the engine, and just sat there listening. That's when I noticed the quiet. Now I've stopped at plenty of rest areas in my day, and even the remote ones got some sounds. Bugs, wind, maybe the distant rumble of a far-off truck. But here, nothing. Not a chirp, not a breeze. It was like the world was holding its breath. I cracked open the door and stepped out, stretching my legs, and that's when I heard it. A faint whisper. Not like the wind or nothing. It was words just low and slithering like someone whispering right into my ear but from far away at the same time. I spun around, heart thumping, eyes darting to the shadows, but there wasn't a soul in sight, just the trees, swaying, a little like they were breathing. I figured maybe it was stress getting to me. Long haul, no sleep, maybe even heat stroke. I walked over to the table and sat down, lit up a smoke, tried to steady my nerves. That's when I saw something carved into the tabletop. It looked fresh, too. Jagged lines scratched into the concrete, not even worn down. It read, "He follows the lonely road." I ran my fingers over it. It was deep. Too deep for someone to just casually carve with a pocket knife. As I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of it, I heard another sound. Footsteps. Soft, slow, coming from the woods behind me. I jumped to my feet, spun around, and that's when I saw it again. That same figure from the road. Still smiling, still watching. Only this time he wasn't alone. There were more of them. At least 4, maybe 5, standing just past the tree line, half hidden in the dark. Each one of them had that same stretched skin, those black eyes, and those impossible twisted grins. I didn't stick around to count. I ran straight back to my truck, fumbled with the keys, slammed the door shut, and peeled out of there so fast I kicked up a cloud of gravel that I hoped would blind him or at least slow him down. I looked in the rearview mirror again. Nothing. Just that rest stop sitting still and silent like nothing had ever happened. I was breathing so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. Every nerve in my body was lit up like a Christmas tree, but I kept the pedal floored, watching the road like a hawk. The headlight stretched out ahead of me, cutting through the dark like a knife, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Like something was riding along with me, maybe not in the cab, but nearby, close. My eyes kept darting to the mirrors, expecting to see one of those pale freaks hanging onto the back, but there was nothing. Just the night and the endless black ribbon of highway. I turned the radio on, hoping some noise might calm me down, but all I got was static. Every station. Just that hissing white noise, broken up every now and then by a voice whispering something too fast and too low to understand. I even tried the CB, but it was dead quiet. No chatter from other truckers, no weather reports, nothing. Just that eerie silence again. Like I'd driven into some place the rest of the world didn't recognize. I finally saw a sign for a diner up ahead. Millie's Stop and Eat 24 hours. Said it was 5 miles off the next exit. I didn't hesitate. I took the ramp so hard. My trailer fishtailed a bit, but I didn't care. I needed to be around people, lights, anything normal. When I pulled into the lot, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The place was lit up in that familiar yellow glow, neon signs buzzing, and I could see a couple of rigs already parked out front. It looked safe. It looked real. I parked, climbed down, and walked in. The bell above the door jingled, and the warmth of the diner wrapped around me like a blanket. Classic checkerboard floors, red leather booths, and a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the place opened in the 60s. She smiled and handed me a menu like nothing was wrong. I sat down in a booth by the window, ordered a coffee, and tried to relax. 2 other truckers were sitting at the counter talking low, probably about fuel prices or routes. I wanted to join in, maybe share what I'd seen, but I kept quiet. Didn't want to sound crazy. But then the bell jingled again. I looked up, and my blood turned to ice. That same pale man, the one from the road, walked in like he belonged there. Only now he looked different. More normal. Still tall, still thin, but his eyes weren't black anymore, they were blue. Still, I knew it was him, I could feel it. He walked past me without a glance, sat at the counter, and the waitress poured him a cup like he was a regular. I stared, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Then, one of the other truckers leaned toward me and said real low, "You saw him, didn't you?" My heart skipped. I nodded slowly. The man looked me dead in the eye and said, "Once. You see him, you never stop seeing him." My stomach dropped when he said that. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was messing with me or if he knew exactly what I'd seen. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just sipped his coffee like it was any other night. "Who is he?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. The guy leaned back on his stool, glanced over at the pale man who was sitting at the end of the counter, then looked back at me. "Nobody knows for sure," he said. "Some say he's a ghost. Others say he's something older. Something that lives in the empty places, the in-betweens, roads, highways, places where the world forgets to look." The other trucker, older fellow with a big gray beard, chimed in. "Saw him first in Texas, thought I'd imagined it. Then again in Colorado. Then Nevada. He's always there, just watching. And if you look too long, he follows." I couldn't breathe. I turned back to the man at the counter, but his stool was empty. Coffee still steaming, but he was gone. No footsteps, no doorbell, nothing. I jumped up, spun around, looked out the window. The lot was empty. The road was still. Not a soul in sight. The waitress came over and asked if I was all right, but I couldn't even answer. I paid for my coffee and left a big tip just to get the hell out of there. Back in the truck, I sat behind the wheel, trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't. I even slapped my own face, thinking maybe I was dreaming, but the sting felt real enough. I started the engine and rolled out onto the highway again, heart hammering like a drum. For the next few hours, I didn't see anything strange, just dark road and my own headlights. But the feeling never left, like someone was behind me. I'd glance at the side mirror every few minutes, expecting to see that grinning face staring back. Around 4 a.m., I pulled into a way station that was lit up and manned. I figured maybe talking to some real people would help. But when I stepped inside, the state trooper behind the glass barely looked up. I handed over my paperwork, and he just stared at it for a moment, then at me. His eyes narrowed. "You come through Route 87, he asked. I nodded. He slid the papers back to me without saying another word. "Get back on the road. Don't stop till the sun's up." I blinked. "What? Why?" He didn't answer, just turned his chair and faced the monitors like he hadn't said a damn thing. I stood there for a second, confused as hell, then took my papers and walked back out. As I climbed into my cab, I saw a shape in the distance, not moving, just standing near the edge of the trees way beyond the floodlights, watching. I floored it. I didn't stop again till I hit daylight. When the first rays of sunlight finally spilled across the horizon, it was like someone lifted 100-pound weight off my chest. The shadows didn't feel as deep, and the air seemed lighter, like I'd finally stepped out of whatever pocket of darkness I'd driven into. Still, I didn't relax. Not fully. I kept looking in my mirrors, my eyes darting between the glass and the road ahead. I pulled into a truck stop just outside Albuquerque. Big place, lots of rigs, plenty of people moving around, talking, laughing. Normalcy. I parked, climbed down from the cab, and just stood there for a minute, stretching my back and breathing in the diesel and coffee smell that truckers know better than their own cologne. I went inside, grabbed a breakfast sandwich and the strongest coffee they had, and sat down at a table by the window where I could keep an eye on my truck. I was hoping that with the daylight, that feeling, the dread, would go away. But it didn't. It just got quiet, like it was watching, waiting. That's when I struck up a conversation with a young guy sitting a few booths down. Rookie, probably no more than a year behind the wheel, wearing a ball cap from a company I'd never heard of. We started talking about routes and way, stations, the usual small talk, but when I mentioned driving Route 87 overnight, his whole face changed, went pale. His voice got real quiet. "You see him?" he asked. I didn't even have to say who. We both knew. He leaned in close, looked around like he was worried someone might hear us, and said, "I picked up a hitchhiker last year on that road." He looked normal at first, real quiet, barely said a word. But the longer he sat there, the colder it got in the cab, even with the heater cranking. Then he started humming this weird tune, low and tuneless like a kid humming to a broken music box. And his face, he swallowed hard. His face changed, slowly, like melting wax. By the time I pulled over to make him get out, he just vanished. 1 second he was in the seat, next he was gone. Door never opened, he was just gone. I stared at him, coffee forgotten, sandwich going cold. This wasn't just some highway ghost story, this was something real, something that other drivers, honest, tough, seen-it-all types had run into too. We sat in silence for a bit, both of us just staring out the window like we expected to see that grinning pale bastard appear between the fuel pumps. But he didn't. Not yet. I thanked the kid, got up and walked back out to my truck, climbing in and starting the engine. I figured maybe I'd take a different route this time. Avoid Route 87 altogether. Maybe head north for a while. But when I checked my GPS and the route had already been changed, somehow, automatically, it now read, "Return to Route 87, estimated arrival, Unknown. That cold feeling crept back in, like ice crawling up my spine. And in the corner of the screen, just for a split second, I swear I saw a reflection. A face. Smiling. Always smiling. I jabbed the power button on the GPS so hard I nearly cracked the screen. But it didn't turn off. Just froze. Still showing Route 87, still counting down toward some destination it refused to name. I yanked the power cord, and even with it unplugged, the damn thing stayed on. That pale grin still lingered for a heartbeat before blinking, away like it had never been there. My hands were sweating, my heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I threw the GPS into the passenger seat footwell and just sat there, breathing heavy, trying to make sense of it. I told myself maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I was overtired. But deep down I knew better. That thing, whatever it was, it wasn't done with me. And somehow it had gotten into my truck. Into my equipment. Into me. I put the rig in gear and pulled out of the lot, determined to stay on the main highway, stick to busy roads, truck stops, places where other folks were, always nearby. Safety in numbers, right? But as I drove, things started changing. Signs were missing. Mile markers vanished. Gas stations that should have been there weren't. I'd passed that stretch of road a dozen times before, and suddenly it didn't look the same. The landscape twisted subtly. Trees that leaned too far. Shadows that stretched too long. Fences rusted out like they'd been abandoned for decades. And the sky, even though it was still daytime, had this sickly, dull haze hanging over it like something was filtering the sunlight. I turned on the radio again, hoping for music, news, anything. But all I got was that same static, that same faint whispering just underneath it. Only this time I could make out a few words. Keep driving. He's waiting. Keep driving. I hit the brakes and pulled off onto the shoulder. I wasn't going to play this game. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone, tried to call dispatch, tried to call anyone. No signal. 0 bars. The time on the screen was frozen at 2:14 p.m. It had been 2:14 for the last 30 minutes. That's when I heard it. A thump. From inside the trailer. My blood ran cold. Ain't no reason there should have been any sound back there. I wasn't carrying livestock. Just a load of machine parts all strapped down tight. Another thump. Louder this time. Something was moving in the trailer. Something big. I reached for my flashlight, climbed down, and stood at the back of the truck, staring at the locked trailer doors. The metal seemed to vibrate slightly. Like whatever was inside was breathing. I backed up. I wasn't going to open it, no way. But then the lock just dropped by itself. Fell right off the latch like something had unlocked it from the inside. The doors creaked open slowly, inch by inch, even though there wasn't a breeze. And inside, just darkness. Thick, unnatural darkness, like the inside of a cave a mile, underground. My flashlight barely cut into it. I stepped closer against my better judgment, raising the light, and a hand reached out, pale, long, fingers like bone wrapped in freezer-burned skin. It grabbed the edge of the door, and that grinning face leaned out of the shadows, eyes black as tar, mouth stretched impossibly wide, like it was trying to swallow the light. I stumbled backward, fell onto the gravel, kicked at the ground, to crawl away. And just as fast as it had come out, it was gone. The doors slammed shut on their own, and the lock clicked back into place. I lay there, heart hammering in my ears, knowing one thing for damn sure. This wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't get back in the truck right away. I sat there on the gravel shoulder, knees scraped, palms bloody from the fall, trying to get my breath back. I kept staring at the trailer like it might split open again, and that thing would come, pouring out, crawling toward me with that unholy grin still plastered on its face. But nothing happened. The wind was dead still, the trees didn't move, and the only sound was the soft ticking of the engine cooling down. After what felt like a solid hour, probably only 10 minutes, I got back on my feet, still shaking. I climbed back in the cab, locked the doors, and sat behind the wheel, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I was going to drive until I hit civilization, until I saw other cars, other people, anything. I didn't care about the delivery. I didn't care about the company. I just needed to get the hell away from whatever I'd stumbled into. I put the truck in gear and rolled out slow, my eyes darting from the mirrors to the road, barely breathing. The GPS, still showing Route 87, was dead silent, but I could feel it watching me. That thing. It wasn't just a ghost or a spirit or some backwoods hallucination. It was something older. Something that knew how to hunt, how to get in your head and twist the world around you. The road started changing again. The sky grew darker even though the clock still read mid-afternoon. The trees thinned out, replaced by these twisted black shapes that didn't look like any trees I'd ever seen. The pavement cracked under my tires, and the air smelled like rust and rotted wood. I passed a road sign that looked handmade, carved, out of some old board with shaky letters that read, "No exit, turn back." But I couldn't. There was nowhere to turn, just a single strip of broken asphalt stretching ahead like a noose made of road. And then I saw the car. An old Chevy. Looked like it had been there a long time, sitting sideways across the road like someone had spun out and crashed. I slowed down, squinting. The driver's door was open, and the interior light blinked on and off like it couldn't decide if it still worked. I rolled down my window just a crack and called out, "You all right?" No answer. I grabbed my flashlight again, God help me, and stepped out. I couldn't leave someone stranded, even after everything I'd seen. I approached the car slow, boots crunching the gravel. Inside, the seats were torn, mold climbing the upholstery, and on the windshield, handprints. Dozens of them, like someone or something had been trying to claw their way out. My flashlight flickered, and just then I heard whispering. Not from the car, from the woods. My heart jumped. I turned toward the sound, light shakily sweeping over the trees. And there he was, standing at the edge of the forest, smiling. That same pale bastard with eyes like oil and a mouth that stretched too wide to be human. He didn't move. He didn't have to. I turned and ran back to my rig like my life depended on it, because it did. Slammed the door, locked it again, fired the engine up and floored it. The truck roared back to life and I barreled past the wreck, past the trees, past everything. That face burned into my brain, following me even with my eyes closed. And when I looked in the side mirror, swear to God, he was sitting in the passenger seat, grinning like he'd been riding with me the whole time. I didn't scream, couldn't. My throat locked up like my body knew better than my brain what kind of danger I was in. I just kept staring at that passenger seat, heart hammering, so loud I thought it'd shake the windows right out of the cab. He sat there like he'd always belonged, legs crossed casual, hands folded real polite, and that grin never shifting. His eyes didn't blink. Just big, wet voids that looked like they could swallow light. Then, without moving his mouth, he said something. I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt it, in my head, like a cold whisper sliding across the inside of my skull. Keep driving. You're on the road now. And then he was gone. Just blinked out. No flash, no puff of smoke, just gone. The seat was empty again, but the smell he left behind, that moldy old dirt smell like grave soil and rain rot, it lingered, so thick I had to roll the window down to keep from gagging. I kept driving, knuckles white on the wheel, gas, pedal pinned down like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I didn't dare stop. I didn't dare look at the GPS. I didn't even check the mirrors no more. I just drove. And the road? It kept changing. Trees bent over the highway, like crooked old men. The yellow lines on the asphalt twisted into symbols, some kind of writing I couldn't read but made my eyes hurt if I stared too long. Then the truck stuttered. Just a quick hiccup like the engine coughed. The dash lights flickered and the whole cab went cold. Not air conditioner cold. Winter in a funeral home cold. My breath fogged up the windshield, and the radio, off for hours, crackled back to life with a voice I ain't never heard before. A woman, soft and hollow like she was speaking through a tunnel under 100 miles of dirt. Turn around, she said. It's not too late, but don't look in the mirror. I didn't move, didn't even blink. Then the voice snapped. sharp and desperate. "Don't look in the mirror." But of course I did, I had to. I glanced up at the rear view, just for a second, and I saw myself, only it wasn't me. It was someone who looked like me, gripping the wheel with hands that were too long, with skin that looked stretched and thin. His eyes were gone, just black sockets, and he was smiling that same god-awful grin. I slammed the mirror upward, nearly ripping it off the mount, heart-jacking like I'd swallowed a live wire. The road blurred under me, trees flashing by like strobe lights, and the sky turned the color of old bruises, purple and gray, like the world had run out of daylight. And then the road ended. Just stopped. No signs. No off-ramp. Just a wall of trees and dirt where the highway should have kept going. I hit the brakes hard, tires locking up, rig skidding sideways until it finally groaned to a stop just inches from the tree line. The engine stalled, and for a moment, everything was still quiet. Even the wind had died. I sat there gasping, heart thundering, trying to figure out if this was real or if I'd finally lost it somewhere back on that cursed stretch of Route 87. Then I heard a tap, real soft, on the passenger window. I turned slow, and he was back. That thing. Grinning, patient like a spider waiting on a fly to accept its fate. He lifted one finger and pointed. Not at me, but past the dash, toward the woods, toward whatever waited in the trees. And in my head, I heard his voice. Again, cold, calm, time to unload. I shook my head slow, like somehow that would change what was happening, like denial could put the brakes on reality. "Ain't no way I'm going in there," I muttered, not even realizing I was speaking out loud. The thing outside didn't move, just kept pointing toward the woods like time had stopped for him and all he had was patience. The trees looked wrong, too close together, too twisted. Their bark had this wet black sheen like they'd been dipped in oil, and the leaves didn't rustle. They pulsed, like breathing. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to figure out what to do, when the rig's radio popped back, on with a screech loud enough to make me flinch, but this time it wasn't static. It was voices, screaming. Dozens of them. Men, women, kids, wailing, begging, crying for help. My ears rang, my skin crawled, and I just about threw up from the pressure in my head. Then they all stopped at once, cut off like someone yanked the plug on a nightmare. Silence hit harder than the noise. I reached for the ignition, thinking, if I could just get the truck turned around, maybe I could escape this madness, but the key wouldn't turn. It was like the whole rig had locked up on its own, like it was refusing to go anywhere but forward, into the woods. And that's when the cab door clicked, not opened, just unlocked all by itself. I froze. My fingers hovered over the key, breath shallow, not even blinking. Another click. The passenger door this time. Then the handle started to move. I reached for my crowbar under the seat, my hand shaking so bad I dropped it once before gripping it tight. The door creaked open slow like it weighed 1,000 pounds, but no one was there, nothing climbed in. Just that smell, like old blood and rotted leaves flooding the cab. I looked down and noticed muddy footprints on the passenger floor. Big ones, human-shaped but wrong, like someone with too many toes and no heel. My heart felt like it was beaten in my throat, my vision tunneling. Then I heard my name, my real name. Not driver, not buddy, not any nickname. It came from the trees, whispered but clear. Sounded like my ma used to say it when I was little and did something bad. I don't know how it knew my name. I don't want to know. But something about that voice, soft, cold, familiar, it pulled me. Against everything I knew, I stepped out of the cab. The gravel under my boots felt loose like I was walking on bones instead of rock. I should have ran, should have jumped in the back and locked myself inside. But I kept walking toward the woods, crowbar tight in my grip, the smell growing, stronger with every step. That thing wasn't pointing anymore, it was gone, vanished, and the trees, they'd opened up, like a path had been cleared just for me, a tunnel of branches and shadows waiting to swallow me whole. I took one step in and the air changed, heavy, wet, full of whispers. The kind you hear when you're falling asleep and you ain't sure if they're dreams or memories. I walked slow, every instinct screaming to turn back. But my legs, Didn't listen. The deeper I went, the darker it got. I couldn't see the truck behind me anymore. Only the trail ahead, and whatever was waiting at the end of it. I kept moving down that crooked trail, branches hanging low like fingers, trying to pull me back in the air. God, the air was thick with this rot that clung to my skin like wet smoke. Every step I took made the whispers louder. They weren't coming from behind me now, they were all around, weaving in and out of the trees like they were using the woods to speak. I heard laughter, high-pitched and broken, like a child's voice played in reverse. I heard sobbing, deep and guttural. And somewhere in all of it I heard breathing, not mine, not animal, just steady and deliberate, always a few feet behind me no matter how quick I moved. My flashlight had long since died. The screen on my phone was just a dull glow, and the only light left was this strange, flickering green that seemed to bleed out of the bark itself. Every now and then, I'd catch a shape between the trees, not quite human, long, thin, pale as bone with joints bent the wrong direction, always moving but never getting closer, like they were herding me, and I let 'em, because deep down, I knew the second I turned around, I wouldn't be walking out the way I came. Then, just as sudden as it started, the forest opened up into a small circular clearing. In the center of it stood this massive stone archway, black and jagged like it had been clawed out of the earth itself. Symbols were carved into it, glowing, the same sickly green as the trees. And hanging from the top of the arch, swinging slow in the windless air, was a chain. At the end of that chain was a trucker's hat, faded red, dirty. But I recognized it. I'd seen it in a picture once, stapled to a wall at a truck stop in Arizona. Missing since 1992, the flyer had said. Name was Hank Bledsoe. Nobody ever found him. But here was his hat hanging like a trophy. I stepped closer, mouth dry, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, and then I noticed the ground. It wasn't dirt. It was concrete. Old, cracked, but underneath the moss and grime were tire marks, a dozen different tracks, some fresh, some nearly erased by time, all leading through that arch. That's when I understood. This wasn't just some haunted forest or cursed patch of land. This was a gate, a doorway, not to hell, not like the stories, but to something older, stranger, deeper, a place where things got twisted, where roads led in but didn't lead out. I felt my knees weaken, bile rising in my throat. I turned to run. I had to. I didn't care what followed. I just knew I couldn't go through that arch. But the path behind me was gone. The trees had closed in, and that breathing, that slow, wet breathing, was right behind me now. I spun around, crowbar up, ready to swing, but nothing was there. Just empty air and that feeling that I was being watched by 100 eyes I couldn't see. Then the voice came again. Drive. I blinked, and I was back in the cab. Just like that. Behind the wheel. Hands shaking, the truck engine humming low, the smell of mold and smoke still thick in my nose. The GPS had a new route lit up, blinking bright red. No road name, just a line. Straight through nothing. And my hands, they moved on their own. Gripped. The wheel. Put the rig in gear. I screamed, fought it, tried to pull away, but my body didn't listen, like I was watching myself from the outside. The truck started rolling, slow at first, then faster. And through the windshield I saw the arch, dead ahead, bigger now, closer, waiting. And just before I passed under it, I heard every voice, from the woods scream in unison like they were all being yanked back into silence. Then, darkness. I woke up cold. Not just regular cold, like I'd been buried underground for weeks, and the earth itself was leaching all the heat out of me. My head throbbed, every nerve feeling raw and stretched thin like I'd been pulled through some nightmare and tossed back into reality. The first thing I saw was the dashboard, lit up like a Christmas tree, warning lights flashing red and yellow in a dizzying dance. My hands were still on the wheel, but my fingers felt numb and foreign like they belonged to someone else. The truck was parked, engine idling quietly, and outside the windows. Just black. No stars, no moon, not even a hint of highway or trees. just endless, suffocating darkness. I tried to move, but my body was frozen. Then the radio crackled again. Static at first, then a voice, soft, tired, but unmistakably mine. It said, "Welcome back, driver." I swallowed hard, heart pounding, wondering if I'd finally lost it or slipped through some crack in time. The voice continued, "You've crossed the threshold, seen what lies beyond. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning." My breath caught. I forced my eyes open wider, trying to focus. The cab started to fill with mist, cold and thick, swirling around my boots and climbing up my legs like fingers reaching for me. The windshield fogged over completely, and in the condensation, words started to form. Drive the endless road. Deliver the lost. That was when I saw them. Faces. Hundreds of faces pressed against the glass, pale and desperate, mouths open, in silent screams. They weren't looking at me. They were looking past me like they were trapped somewhere just beyond the glass. I realized then the truck wasn't on any map, wasn't on any road I'd ever seen. It was moving through some other place. A highway for the lost souls, the forgotten drivers, the ones who never made it home. And I was driving for them now. There was no GPS, no radio signals, no daylight. Just me, the rig, and the endless haunted highway stretching on forever. The crowbar lay on the seat beside me, cold and heavy like a promise. I gripped it tighter, ready for whatever came next, 'cause I knew this journey wasn't over. It was just getting started. And if I was lucky, I might just find a way, back before I became one of those faces pressed to the glass begging for a way out. I'm glad you're hooked, because the road only gets darker from here. After that night, everything changed. Days and nights blurred together like ink spilling on a page. I couldn't tell if I was driving for hours or years. The highway, stretched out in every direction, endless black asphalt swallowing the horizon with no exits, no rest stops, no friendly diner lights. Only shadows. The faces on the windows never left me. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of a kid with hollow eyes, sometimes an old man with a cracked smile, and sometimes women whose mouths whispered secrets I couldn't quite understand. They didn't try to harm me, they just watched, waited. I learned to talk to them in a way, murmuring soft promises to remember their names, to find their way home. And every so often the rig would shudder like it was running on something, more than diesel, like the road itself was alive and I was just a passenger in a machine haunted by souls. The crowbar became my talisman, my anchor. I kept it close, swinging it at shadows that lunged from the mist, at whispering hands that tried to crawl in through the vents. I never saw what exactly those things were, just flickers, shapes, twisted like nightmares come to life. But they hated the crowbar. Every swing sent them screaming back into the dark. And one night, when the radio crackled back to life again, the voice wasn't mine anymore. It was a man's voice, low and gravelly, speaking in riddles. You carry the burden. The highway remembers, but it can forget. Deliver the lost or become lost yourself. I didn't understand all of it then, but I knew I had a choice. Keep driving, keep carrying souls, or let the road claim me too. Somewhere deep down I prayed for a way out. A break in the night. A sign. But the road never showed mercy. Not once. And every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw that other me. Black eyes, long fingers, that same cruel grin. Watching, waiting. Maybe someday I'll tell you what happened when I finally faced him. But for now, you just gotta believe me when I say, some highways aren't meant for truckers like us. They belong to things that shouldn't exist, and if you find yourself alone on a dark road with no end, don't stop driving. Because the moment you do, you're already lost. I swear, after that night, I started seeing things even on the highways I thought I knew like the back of my hand. The kind of things that make a man question his own mind, but there I was. Eyes wide open, clutching the wheel tighter than ever. On one stretch through the desert, way past any town or sign, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. Not just any figure. This one was tall, too tall, with limbs stretched out like they were made of shadows. Its face was a blank slate, smooth and pale, reflecting the moonlight like a ghost's mask. I slammed on the brakes, but the truck just kept rolling. No matter how hard I tried, the rig refused to stop. The figure raised a hand, slow and deliberate, and I swear I heard a voice in my head say, "Follow me." My stomach twisted, but something about that command wasn't a threat. It was a plea, like the thing was trapped too. I turned the wheel, following it off the highway onto a dirt trail I'd never seen on any map. The engine sputtered. The lights flickered, but that shadowy figure kept moving, guiding me deeper into the dark. Trees closed in tight, branches scratching at the rig like they wanted to pull me under. Then I saw the clearing. An old gas station, abandoned, with rusted pumps and faded signs. The air smelled of gasoline and decay, and the silence was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. I stepped out of the truck, crowbar in hand, and the figure was there just beyond the pumps, waiting. It spoke then, its voice like wind through dead leaves, telling me stories of lost drivers, cursed roads, and bargains made in desperation. I listened, even though every fiber of my being screamed to run. The figure warned me that the highway wasn't just a road. It was a living nightmare feeding on fear and souls. And if I didn't keep moving, if I didn't deliver those lost souls to wherever they needed to go, I'd be next. That night, I learned that some trucks don't just haul cargo, they haul souls, trapped between worlds, carried by the cursed highway. And me? I'm the driver stuck in the middle, trying to keep the rig rolling and the darkness at bay. The nights kept getting colder and the shadows longer. After that encounter at the gas station, the things I saw became harder to explain, harder to ignore. Sometimes when I was parked for a quick break, I'd catch movement out the corner of my eye. A figure standing just beyond the glow of my headlights, vanishing the moment I turned to look. Other times the rig's mirrors would show a hitchhiker sitting silently on the side of the road, but when I blinked, there was nobody there. The worst was the feeling, like 1,000 unseen eyes following me, studying me, waiting for me to slip up. One night, driving through a mountain pass, the temperature dropped so fast my breath froze in the cab. I saw frost spread across the windshield, but not from the cold outside. This frost was black like ink blooming in water. The road ahead disappeared beneath a thick fog that smelled like burnt rubber and old secrets. My radio crackled, and a voice whispered my name, low and urgent. "Turn back." I shook my head, but my hands trembled. The crowbar lay on the seat, cold and heavy, like it carried the weight of every soul I'd met on the road. Then, out of nowhere, headlights appeared in the fog. A semi-truck, blazing toward me with no driver visible. The truck didn't slow down. I swerved hard, heart pounding, the rig fishtailing on the slick asphalt. When I regained control, the other truck was gone. Just empty road, silent and still. I don't know if it was real or some trick of the cursed highway, but I'm telling you, I've never felt more alone or more hunted. Every mile I drive, every mile I survive, I carry their stories with me. The lost, the damned, the forgotten, truckers who vanished without a trace. And I keep on rolling, 'cause stopping means joining them. So if you're out there, driving down some lonely stretch of highway, and you see a trucker with tired eyes and a crowbar on the seat, don't be afraid. He might just be the last hope for those trapped on the road between worlds. And maybe, just maybe, he's driving to find his way back home too. The days started blending together, like the highway itself was some kind of endless loop, a twisted carnival ride you can't get off. The radio never stopped crackling, always whispering voices I couldn't quite place, sometimes calling my name, sometimes warning me. One night I came across an old diner, sitting all alone on the edge of nowhere. The sign flickered with a sickly yellow light that buzzed like it was barely holding on. I pulled in, needing a break from the wheel, a chance to clear my head. The place was empty, but the jukebox played a scratchy tune like it had a life of its own. I sat at the counter, orders nobody had ever come to fill. Then I saw her, a woman in a faded waitress uniform, moving slow, eyes empty but filled with some kind of desperate hope. She didn't speak. She just slid a cup of black coffee toward me, cold and bitter, like the memories I was trying to drown. When I asked her about the highway, her lips moved, but no words came out. Instead, she pointed outside, where the road stretched into a dark forest. I stepped outside, the night air heavy and thick, and heard footsteps behind me, soft, shuffling, like someone following a lost rhythm. I turned, crowbar raised, but no one was there. Then the fog rolled in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Shapes appeared in the mist, faces twisted in pain and longing, reaching out, like they wanted to be saved. I realized then that the highway wasn't just a road. It was a trap, a prison for souls caught between the worlds. And me? I was the reluctant warden, driving the endless route, carrying their stories, their fears, hoping to find a way to set them free. But every night the road gets darker and the voices get louder, and I'm still driving, still searching for that final exit. The more miles I put behind me, the heavier the air felt, like every ounce of hope was being squeezed out of the rig. One night I rolled into a stretch of highway where the fog wasn't just a mist. It was thick enough to choke on, rolling over the road like a living thing. Visibility dropped to near zero and my headlights barely cut through the gray. Suddenly my rig shuddered like it hit something solid, but when I looked down there was nothing there, just the road vanishing into the fog. Then came the knock, 3 sharp raps on the door. I froze. Nobody was supposed to be out here, especially not at this hour. The crowbar was already in my grip, but I was too scared to move. The knocking came again, louder this time. But when I glanced at the window, the road was empty. No hitchhiker, no figure, just swirling fog. That's when I realized the knock wasn't on the door. It was inside the cab. On the dashboard, where my keys rested, they rattled as if a hand was tapping from beneath the surface. My heart slammed against my ribs as the voice came over the radio, low and menacing, whispering my name. The rig's engine sputtered and died, plunging me into silence so deep it pressed against my ears. I grabbed the crowbar and yanked. The door opened, but the fog rushed in like a living wave, swallowing me whole. And in that moment, I knew the highway wasn't just haunted. It was hungry. It wanted me, and I could only pray I'd find a way out before it claimed me like the others. Every trucker's nightmare was real, and I was living it. The rig finally sputtered back to life, coughing and groaning like it was struggling to break free from some invisible chains. I slammed my hands on the wheel, eyes darting through the thick fog that refused to lift. I didn't wait for an invitation. I slammed the accelerator down, feeling the truck roar beneath me like a wild beast desperate to escape the nightmare. The headlights barely pierced the mist, but in that low visibility I caught glimpses of shadowy figures lining the roadside, ghostly silhouettes that seemed to bend and twist with the wind, their eyes glowing faintly like embers in a dying fire. They reached out with hands that flickered between solid and smoke, whispering things I couldn't quite catch. I gripped that crowbar tighter, swearing I could hear it humming with some kind of energy, like it was the only thing holding the darkness at bay. The road beneath me seemed to ripple like water frozen in place but ready to crash down. I fought every instinct to look back, 'cause I knew whatever was behind me wasn't just chasing. It was hungry for the soul that drove this rig. As the fog started to thin, the highway stretched out like an endless ribbon of blacktop, disappearing into a horizon smeared with blood-red dawn. I don't know how long I drove that night, but when the first light finally cracked through, the ghosts faded, the whispers died, and the crowbar felt lighter in my hands. For a moment I thought maybe I'd outrun it. Maybe the cursed highway had let me go. But deep down I knew better. The road never forgets. It never lets go. And somewhere out there, in the shadows and the fog, the lost are still waiting. And so am I. The dawn wasn't a blessing. It was just another trick. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a weak, sickly light that did nothing to chase away the feeling gnawing at my gut. The rig's engine hummed steady now, but my hands didn't loosen on the wheel. The crowbar lay heavy on the seat beside me, a constant reminder that this wasn't any ordinary haul. The highway stretched endless ahead, roads twisting and bending, like a serpent in the dust. Somewhere out there were those faces again, lost souls hitching a ride to nowhere. I saw movement in the side mirror, a flash of pale skin, a shadow flickering just at the edge of sight. The kind of thing that'd make most men slam the brakes and never look back. But not me. I'd learned to live with the fear, to welcome it like a strange old friend. Because if you stop on this road, if you give in to that terror, you become one of them. One night I pulled over near an old rest stop that didn't exist on any map. The place was a ruin, vines crawling over the cracked concrete, windows shattered like broken promises. I stepped out, breathing in the cold night air, when a voice whispered from the shadows, "You're not alone." I turned, crowbar ready, but there was nobody there, just the sound of footsteps disappearing into the dark. The rig's radio crackled one last time before going silent, a low hum that faded into the night. I climbed back in, feeling the weight of all those lost stories on my shoulders. I don't know how long I'll keep driving, or if there's even an end to this cursed highway. But I do know one thing. Every mile I cover, every shadow I face, I'm fighting to keep my soul. Because on these roads, it's not just about reaching your destination. It's about surviving the journey. That cursed highway had a way of testing a man's will like no other. One night the sky turned pitch black before the sun had even set. The radio, dead silent for hours, suddenly erupted with static and eerie whispers that chilled me to the bone. I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks, but the crowbar on the seat beside me seemed to vibrate, thrumming with a power I couldn't explain. Suddenly the headlights flickered, and through the dim glow I saw a figure standing right in the middle of the road. A man, or maybe not quite a man. His eyes glowed an unnatural red, and his smile was twisted, almost mocking. The rig's engine died, and I was stranded. Heart pounding, I grabbed the crowbar and stepped out. The air was thick and smelled like burnt rubber and decay. The figure didn't move, just watched, his gaze burning into me. Then, a voice came over the radio, clear and sharp. "You can't run from the road." I swung the crowbar, but my swing went through him like smoke. The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder in the silence. I stumbled back, breath catching. I knew then the highway wasn't just haunted. It was alive, a beast with 1,000 eyes and a hunger that never faded. And me? I was just a driver caught in its jaws, trying to hold on to whatever part of my soul was left. The crowbar was my only friend, my only weapon in a fight I wasn't sure I could win. But I kept on driving, because stopping meant losing myself forever to the darkness that ruled these roads. I ain't gonna lie. After all these years on the road, after all the nights haunted by shadows and whispers, I still don't fully understand what that highway really is. But I do know one thing for sure. It's more than just pavement and paint. It's a battleground where souls get caught, and the line between the living and the lost gets blurred. That night with the red-eyed figure changed me forever. I realized the only way to survive wasn't just to keep driving. It was to accept the road's curse, to carry the weight of those lost souls, to be their guide through the endless night. I still hear their voices in the hum of the engine, see their faces in the foggy mirrors, feel their presence when the crowbar hums beside me. And every time I pull onto that highway, I'm not just driving a truck, I'm driving a path between worlds. So if you ever find yourself on a lonely stretch of road, and you see a rig rolling through the darkness, maybe with a weary driver clutching a crowbar, don't be afraid. He's just carrying the stories that the highway won't let go, fighting to keep the darkness at bay 1 mile at a time. That's my story, true horror stories from the highway. And trust me, it's one ride you won't forget. If you want to hear more, just keep your eyes on the road and maybe I'll share another tale. But for now, keep safe out there. The highway's always watching,